The sky so far, but I can't lose it.
Wreck avoidances.
Stay low. Speed high, stay low.
Daring passes.
Outside. Oh, you're going to get it.
Silly jumps.
Oh my god, a drive-through.
The thrill of victory.
They're against the wall. Good one, Mark. Stay low.
And the occasional mishap.
My sim crashed.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
A new beginning with familiar faces. For the first time, Lionheart is going back to its roots. 18 races to determine who is the best and the most exciting form of auto racing on the planet. 200-mile-an-hour Indy cars, inches from disaster or glory. There can only be one inaugural champion, whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. Find out next. The Lionheart Speedway Series, presented by DMLC Racing Channel, starts now.
Welcome to the land of the rising sun, as the Lionheart Racing Series, powered by HyperX, welcomes back a sleeping giant. Last used almost 4 years ago, the Dallara DW12 returns to Lionheart competition today as we kick off the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by the DMLC Racing Channel. It's only fitting that to start a brand new series off, we visit a track which the Lionheart himself, Dan Weldon, conquered for Honda in 2004 after 6 long years without a victory at home for the Japanese manufacturer. Today, this track lies unused for most of the year in the real world, but now, the virtual twin-ring Motegi gets set to host the HyperX Motegi 200. The Lionheart Racing Series, powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows that we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit www.hyperxgaming.com and don't forget to use the promo code Lionheart15, that's LIONHRT15, for 15% off all orders. Let's dive into our Sim Experience countdown for green. The Sim Experience AccuForce Pro V2 is the premier professional simulation racing steering system. The key to its incredible realism is the groundbreaking direct drive motor control system, providing a driving experience that's second only to the real thing. For more information on the entire Sim Experience ecosystem, visit www.simexperience.com. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, delighted that you're joining us here live on RaceBot TV for round 1 in the Lionheart Speedway Series. And Justin, we've already kicked off 2 of our competitions in the Lionheart Racing Series. Now we break out one of the most historic cars on the iRacing service. The Dallara DW12 has so much history on the iRacing service, and now we create more history today in Lionheart competition.
So many close finishes in so many different series, both official and across iRacing, have taken place in this car. And there's so many challenges that today could bring with this machine. Knowing car controls for these drivers to try to adjust means these drivers are going to have to work with their foot to try and battle with these race cars. They're also going to be trying to battle at a track known for speed, but also difficulty. With its tight corners, it's going to be some exciting action, but it's also going to be a test to see which drivers can try and conquer Twin Ring Motegi.
And built specifically for IndyCar to bring, Honda to bring IndyCar to the Far East, and it took a while, but they took victory here, and a lot of history at this track. Danica Patrick, the first woman to win an IndyCar race, happened here when she beat Helio Castro-Neves. Let's jump in then, Justin, and take a look quickly at the series schedule here, because we start at Motegi and we'll finish at Auto Club. The interesting point here, at least if you ask me, is the double points races. Our Triple Crown isn't 3 of the double points races, just 2 of these ones pay double points. And when you think about these longer races, that really is a big factor.
Yeah, that's going to really affect how these point standings go. And look at some of these racetracks that they'll have to deal with. Many of them in real-world IndyCar staples from across the decades. Texas, the Milwaukee Mile, Homestead, among some of the notable tracks. Of course, Michigan International Speedway, and of course those double points coming at the Brickyard, as well as Auto Club Speedway. Those are going to be 2 races we'll have to see for sure which drivers can conquer, because those are going to be very valuable, to say the very least, with this championship and with the history they have in Lionheart. But I also think in the midst of all things, keep an eye on tracks like Charlotte, like Richmond towards the closing stages, or even a New Hampshire Motor Speedway style of race, where those types of events could be what could decide, in some cases, the championship, with its very mixture of short tracks and larger ovals.
And you know, to some people, they might look at an oval and say, oh, it's just 2 corners. They're all the same when you do one of them. That's not true at all. Very different tests here as well. Let's take a look at the series details as well. The return of a Lionheart Racing staple. It's the 7th year of this racing sanctioning body, but for the first time in a couple of seasons, we return to the DW12. An important point to note right off the top here, Justin, is while in the IndyCar series with the Dallara IR18, you have the adjustment in cars. In this series, it's just a custom fixed setup. Drivers have no adjustment in the car.
Yes, as talked about, it's going to be a challenge for these drivers, especially in the corners, because they're going to have to use their feet in particular to make sure they rotate their machines here today. We've mentioned the Triple Crown, for example, as well. Homestead, Indianapolis, and Auto Club. And the question's going to be, will a veteran claim the championship, Arjuna, or a rookie claim their stake in that crown? There's going to be a lot of different drivers looking to make their names tonight, who have won races in this car in the past, who have won here multiple times here in the past, but others who may be racing this car for the first time in officially sanctioned competitions such as this, where the pressure is going to be very high and the expectations are going to be mixed throughout the field.
I was so excited about some of these details that I forgot to say. Series details presented by -273. They are the premier name in karting gloves, and their industry-leading gloves are super lightweight and durable, made of breathable poly spandex. Whether you're a kart or a sim racer, -273 gives you the control to reach victory lane. For more information on -273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit www.-273.biz. And don't forget to also use promo code -273LHRS15 for 15% off all orders. So these are the series details. Let's jump into the event details. And while there isn't necessarily history here, Justin, as we're kicking off a brand new series, of course, the first 5 seasons in the Lionheart IndyCar series ran in this car. There are a couple of people, one in particular, Jason Galvin, who has got a race victory in this car before, but for everyone else, we can classify them as a true rookie to the car.
Absolutely, and keep in mind, the only previous DW12 race winner was mentioned in Season 4. He's a 2-time winner overall in Lionheart competition here, but keep in mind, the pole sitter has never won here in 8 races in the history of Lionheart IndyCar Series sanctioned competition. That's in part because of the challenges of trying to keep the race lead here, especially with the slipstream seen in many different series in the past and many different types of races. Keep in mind, this race can also be one where it can be challenging overall, but one where we don't expect the cautions to fly too much, especially in the later stages. After all, it's only finished under caution just once. That was Season 5 in the IndyCar Series.
And we're going to talk about the track in a bit more detail. Very different at both ends. That's going to be one of, the bigger factors. 3 pit stops on the schedule for today's race, Justin, but I'm not trying to put the hex down on the drivers. I'm expecting cautions to mix up the strategy, and I really do think in a race like this, whoever can come out on top in the strategy game is going to be the one that wins the race as well.
Absolutely agree with you, because we've seen plenty of strategy so far in many of the races across Lionheart in 2021. It came into play at Homestead, especially for track position. I wouldn't be surprised if strategy came into play here today if we get some early caution flags with that fuel window, because it could be tight. One early caution flag could mean drivers could potentially cut out a pit stop under green, and that could be beneficial for some, where others may say it's time to take a risk here at Twin Ring Motegi. As we take a look at the racetrack here, 1.54 miles is this facility's distance. For the IRL, it's measured it at some points to 1.52 miles, 10 degrees, just 10 degrees in the bankings in the corners, and the only oil of its kind for competitive racing in Japan here. As mentioned, though, it's tighter in turns 3 and 4, and drivers have been finding it challenging to try and rotate the car here, Arjuna, to make sure they complete the corner and stick at the bottom of the racetrack here today here at Twin Ring.
You can kind of get an indication from this map as well as we bounce back and forth around this track, but one end is flat out. You can tell the radius of the corner just helps you. The other end, you have to brake a little bit. It's a very different type of an experience. You brake a lot more in the real world in an IndyCar than you do on the iRacing service, just by the nature of online racing. It's a different challenge. It's something they have to deal with. And you said it before we came on air, Justin. No in-car tools means it's all on the drivers. You have to figure out how to use the throttle, how to position your car, how much steering to be using to make sure you stay out of the walls here.
And AJ Musselman said it best in preparation for this race when I spoke to him. The drivers need to be able to learn how to steer with their feet as well tonight, especially in turns 3 and 4 with those non-assists. So he expects the cream to rise to the top. I expect to be the same, since this is going to be a very much driver's track as a result here with the challenges in that part of the racetrack. And others have told me, Arjuna, if you stick at the bottom of the racetrack, you're likely moving your way through the field tonight.
Momentum is always so key, and we'll roll it on over into qualifying then. 5 minutes, solo car qualifying. Each car will get 2 laps out on track to set their fastest lap time. Finally, we get underway then for our 3rd and final of our Lionheart Racing Series on RaceSpot TV and ESTV. Last week it was the IndyCar and Retro Series. This time, it's all about the Speedways. And again, I'm going to re-emphasize this throughout the course of the year, Justin, for maybe some of our viewers on RaceSpot TV who are new to oval racing. In a car like this, it's not the same every lap. Things are constantly changing. It's about adapting and about figuring out how to overcome this track.
And especially the potential aero wash. Drivers have talked about the potential of aero being major factors in the corners as well. So that's going to play a factor in which lines some drivers take, when drivers make specific moves. And as well, they've talked about prior to today's race as well, be smart with those said moves, because if you battle too hard side by side, it could cost you a lot of time to the main pack. So track position, I think, in theory, is going to be very much key to make sure you don't get stuck in those back and forth battles that could lose you time to the race leaders here today.
Let's jump on board with Alexander Van de Sant and take a lap around here at Motegi, all the way down on the inside through 1 and 2. We'll get a better indication of just what 3 and 4 are going to be like from the left side here. You can see down from 5th Manages to stick this one in fourth, but as the tires scrub off, as you have to contend with dirty air, you will see those cars dropping down into third gear for much of the run later on. So lap times coming in. It's Alexis Newsom on provisional pole position, rookie in the series, a 26.920. I'll wait for some of the other contenders to come across the line as well. A couple of drivers I'm expecting to be very strong this year are people who have been in this series for so long, Justin, because they understand what it takes to race in this series. They know what races demand from them, and I really think that for a rookie to come in and over the course of a long season prove themselves as a champion, it's going to take a monumental effort.
I absolutely agree with you, because with the amount of veterans here in this field who have raced in the various different series for many seasons, like Tyler Graf, like James Carhula, Mark Cohen himself, like George Anzardo, it's going to be difficult for these respective competitors. But keep in mind, some air drivers like DJ Clark showed some great speed in the Retro Series, for example, looking to show what he can do. Wouldn't be surprised to see DJ Clark later on in the race try and make some moves if he can stay out of trouble. He's someone that expected to follow along with that same strategy that he did in Retro Series, keep out of trouble and keep the car clean for this race here today.
On board with Chris Stouffer through 1 and 2, talking about drivers that I'm expecting to be strong. No bias here, because I am a member of Adrenaline Motorsports, but with that experience in the Indy cars and being multiple-time team champions, I really do think Stouffer, Joe Branch, and Tony Schowen will be cars to watch out for. Stouffer hasn't set a qualifying lap time just yet, Justin, and with under 2 minutes left to go, pressure is on to make sure that this next lap is going to be a quick one.
And you know how close qualifying is? How about a 1/10 of a second separating the top 16 or so right now? That's how little mistakes are going to be, or how big they are, I should rather say here. But you can see right now just that difficulty of trying to round the bottom, get to the bottom in the white line. That could be the difference between a pole and potentially 20th place starting spot, 24th in fact for Chris Stouffer.
That is not where he wants to start this season off, and, well, lots of work for him then to do, but he continues to head around on track. Only a couple of cars left to set lap times, and one thing that maybe we can spot here, you'll see pit entry. It's not going to be off of turn 4. Cars have to come down on through turn 3, and Justin, that always makes it a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, I've seen drivers in the past when they try and enter on turn 3 end up having a bit of contact there. So it's going to have to be where you're going to have to be aware of your surroundings once drivers duck down to the pit lane later on tonight for their first green flag pit stops. It's going to be where, as long as you indicate you're in that situation where you want to pit, I think you'll be safe. But for others, it's about making sure they are aware you're pitting. Otherwise, there's going to be that contact when drivers try and run the bottom line into turn 3. In racing pace.
Yeah, absolutely. So 15 seconds left in qualifying. We're moments away from going trackside for the first time this season to take a look at our butt kicker starting grid. Quickly though, Justin, expectations from this race.
I'm expecting a very exciting race, to say the very least, with some intense action, but I'm expecting the best drivers once again to be the ones who can handle turns 3 and 4 and round the bottom. Drivers have done multiple warm-up races and practice sessions in preparation for this race. Others, we're still trying to figure out turns 3 and 4 for days, as if they've figured that out for tonight, they're in good shape. If they're still trying to figure it out for this race, they might have to claw their way through this field.
So here's your butt kicker starting grid. On pole for the first time this season, Michael Goodman, a 26.920. There is nothing in it, though, between him and independent driver Alexis Newsom. That is going to be a battle to watch out for. Luis Gonzalez Nunez on the inside of row 2 with Eric Schaust on his outside. Alexander Van de Sant in 5th. Matt Wagner on his outside. Big healthy field of cars here, so we're going to have to work our way through it. Mark Cohen in 7th. Tyler Graf in 8th. James Carhula in 9th. Matt Taylor on the edge of the top 10 for Team Race First Red. Trevor Malone, good to see the teal number 69 in this series as well. Alongside him, Charles Teed for Dark Horse Motorsport. The Muscle Man, AJ Muscleman himself, back in 13th. Joe Hassert in 14th. Mike Rigney 15th. Tony Schowen, the first of the Adrenaline Motorsports drivers, all the way back in 16th. Chris Fowler had a pole at Homestead to kick off one of the other series, back in 17th here, alongside an independent driver, Jeff Seong. Ron Hacker 19th, Vern Hawkins in 20th, DJ Clark in 21st position after a 3rd place in the Retro Series opener, Dean Moll 22nd, Christopher Kresge in 23rd, alongside Indiana's own Chris Stouffer. Joe Branch, George Anzaldo share 25th and 26th positions, Paul Jenkins, Alex Guyon, and then Craig Forsyth, Ken Hacker rounding out the top 30 cars. It's a big field to go through. Brett Bennett, Emerson Santos, Matt Houston, Brian Greenlee, and then Jeff Murray, the final car to set a qualifying lap time. Chris Lanini in 36th. A couple of other cars, Adam Young and Jim Brooks, not setting qualifying lap times. So we're a couple of minutes away then from watching the cars roll themselves out onto track. I tell you what, we've got a couple of onboard cameras to work our way through, so why don't we quickly work through them? First up, it's George Anzaldo, and he's got the butt kicker onboard camera. What you see and what you hear is what you feel. For more information, visit www.thebuttkicker.com.
We are on board with Michael Goodman. It's the Sim Experience onboard camera. Sim Experience, makers of the AccuForce Pro V2 direct drive steering system. For more information, visit simexperience.com.
Big Joe Hassett has the HyperX onboard. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game.
And Tyra Graf will have the Graphics Esports onboard camera. World-class design from real world to virtual. Visit graphicsesports.com.
And the best thing about being on the iRacing.com service is we've got onboard looks with every single one of our cars in today's field. So we'll be able to work our way through every single one of the drivers. But now the pace car, moments away from diving down onto the safety of pit road. 130 laps here at the Twin Ring Motegi circuit. The Dallara DW12 back into Lionheart Racing Series competition. Barney the flagman has the green flag in his hands, and we get set to go racing here in the HyperX Motegi 200. Cars build up speed and thunder their way down into turn 3 and 4. Luis Gonzalez Nunez already up into second. Interesting start there, Justin. A number of cars getting caught out. Number of cars almost getting into the wall coming through turn 4 as well.
And especially with that Tyler Camber on the corner exit, that's to be expected with how tight these cars have been having. And a caution flag already out in turns 1 and 2.
Very early caution. Looks like Eric Schaus mixed up, as is Brett Bennett. Ooh, big damage to a number of these cars. That's a big shame. Very early in today's race, and early in the season as well. Let's take a look then at the replay machine and see exactly why a couple of cars are down on pit road. In through turn 1 they work then, Justin, and ooh, all by himself. I wonder if there's a potential hardware failure here.
And a big time to have that, to say the very least, this early on in the race. And I think as the other drivers were seeing the 22 fly through the air, they were all trying to check up and ended up slamming into one another. Some tough breaks for some of these drivers, not the way they wanted to start off their seasons here.
Take a look at what happened to Brett Bennett in the 47. Looks to the inside. Ooh, that's a big impact there. I think the other car involved is Emerson Takashima. And I think then those are the 3 cars involved. Brett Bennett, the only one able to drive out of that one, Justin. You can see the extent of the damage early in this race.
Yeah, that's going to be a potential race ender there, possibly with the amount of damage. It's going to take a long time to get the damage repaired. Keep in mind, no fast repairs in this series, so that's going to be very tough breaks early on in this race. But a very early caution flag. Looks like no one's going to bite to come down to the pit lane here and top off on fuel this early.
Would be a bit of an interesting call to come down this early, but with a race that's, not had too many cautions in the past, 3 is the maximum we've had here in the Lionheart IndyCar Series, Justin. Be interesting to see. You talked about difficulties later in the run. That was issues very early on in the run.
Yes, indeed, and it's not what we were expecting, absolutely, but later on in the run, we're expecting drivers to have a decent amount of tire wear, keep in mind as well, Arjuna, as these tires slip and slide around, especially with the right side tires. So that's going to be where the drivers who saved the tires the best, I think, are going to be also some of the ones who are going to be stronger towards the end of the run. I found it very interesting, though, how drivers were trying to fan out there, try and break some different toes there early on in different lines down the straightaway, trying to have different entry lines, especially into turns 1 and 2 on the start, as well as into 3 and 4, where some wanted to arc it down, others wanted to go more flatter into turn 3.
I think you will see over the course of the stint, multiple cars will find different ways to make the corner work, especially, again, we're going to mention it a lot, I think, in this series in particular, no in-car tools, and a car that hasn't necessarily gone through the same development as the IR18 over the last couple of months. There's been a new damage model, a new tire model added to the latest and greatest IndyCar on the iRacing service, but of course, we break out what was a fearsome car, produced some legendary races as well. I do think over the course of the season, it will produce some interesting battles as well. I do want to already point out at the front of this field, Justin, Michael Goodman, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, Alexander Van der Sant. You've kind of got 3 different marks of Lionheart. You've got Michael Goodman, who's been in this series for a while, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, who's a very, very strong driver, new to the series, and then someone like Alexander Van der Sant, who's relatively new to iRacing at all, and having a very impressive showing early right now.
Yeah, and that's just what some of the series can bring out, right, is the various different talent levels and show what they can do at the highest levels. And we've seen that so far throughout the Lionheart competitions and seasons so far, in series rather, I should say. Here, though, I think we're getting ready to go back to green. The lights are out on top of that iRacing safety car.
Single file, they form up as well, so after that early caution, I wonder if cars have maybe gotten a bit of that early season anxiety out of their system. And I think with so many new faces making Lionheart debuts in this race, for a lot of them, I'm sure those nerves must be at an all-time high, excuse me. Great to see as well. Some of the family members in our YouTube chat do keep involved with us. But let's go back to green flag racing. Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart. And it's Michael Goodman at the front of the field, leading away from Luis Gonzalez Nunez. They have to go all the way back to about 22nd position before anyone even got a decent jump. Here you can see Tony Schowen is all over the back end of Mike Rigney then, Justin.
It's all the way back in 15th position, in fact, and you can see how much draft and pull you can pick up by riding behind somebody. But here's the tough part. Once you get side by side to the corner, this is what holds you up a decent amount on corner exit in particular. And if you don't clear on by, it can cost you at least a few tenths per lap battling such as this. Now, I think they've realized, okay, we got to try and work together here, or at least try and wind back up if I want to complete this pass by the corner entry.
And I think these guys are very mindful as well that the more they battle, the more time they lose to the cars out front. And talking of those cars out front, Luis Nunez tries to find a way around the outside. There is some intense action throughout the pack, and you can kind of see the first vestiges of a battle here across the start-finish line. It's Tyler Groff down the inside of Matt Wagner. Alexis Newsom, after a very impressive qualifying outside of the front row, Justin, down into 6th, did not get the greatest start. Now has to recover back up through the field.
Yeah, I think right now Alexis is just trying to play this race safe. It was mentioned by one of the drivers who spoke to Adam Young in preparation for this race, where will we see everyone take it easy or try and feel each other out, or we see people trying to be really aggressive early and learn about how these are long races. So far, I think we've seen a mixture of both, where in the case of Newsom, right now she wants to just play this safe and let things feel themselves out while everyone battles across the field.
Look at this on the edge of the top 20. Ron Hacker, 3 wide. They work through turn 3. Hacker's going to squeeze Mike Rigney up into the wall. Chris Stouffer slides down the inside to take advantage. As 2 wide, almost 3 deep, they work in through turn 1. And of course, this is where you can be a bit flatter. Stouffer tries to run a slightly different line to Jeff Seong in front of him. And again, 3 wide as they exit the corner. Wow, this is what I expected, Justin, and it is not disappointing.
It's not disappointing at all, but keep in mind, drivers talked about they expected to go full throttle in turns 1 and 2 in particular. It was 3 and 4 where they expected things to spread out as this race goes on and the tire wear starts to kick in. It was mentioned as well by a couple drivers that, especially for some of the drivers, say, coming over from Retro, where they haven't had to worry too much about the tire wear side of things. They're going to have to definitely be concerned about that here, with tire percentages expected to drop at least 20% on the right side tires at minimum. So these drivers are going to have to keep that in mind, as well as keep that aero wash and aero pull and push in mind when they try and set up these moves to make sure they don't burn up their tires early.
And I think talking about this in terms of tire percentage really doesn't do justice to just how dreadful the cars can feel when you burn off the tires and overheat them as well midway through a run. So I do wonder how cautious some drivers will be versus how aggressive others will be. Edge of the top 5, Mark Cohen is about 0.2 of a second back from Tyler Groff. Some scrapping in front of them for the third and final podium position. I am enjoying this right now, Justin, because there was a message from Race Control earlier in the day about realizing it's a long season, let's get it off on the right foot. And right now, all of these cars very much recognizing that with 130 laps on the agenda and 3 pit stops, you can very much lose it early. You can't win it early.
Exactly. There's still plenty of laps to go. Still 117 laps to go, with 3 green flag pit stops expected for just about the entire field at the moment. But there are still some drivers, keep in mind, who are trying to make up for tough qualifying. Take, for example, Chris Fowler. Up now to 12th position, a +5 in the race. Also a +7 for Chris Stouffer at the moment, +8 for the 66 machine so far. So for a couple drivers, they do want to get that track position back, but for others, they are taking that big picture approach where they need to make sure they keep the car clean for the checkered flag.
And you saw some weaving and ducking down the main straightaway. That's Vern Hawkins, who's got mirrors filled with Chris Stouffer, Tony Schau, and the Adrenaline Motorsports duo. A very disappointing qualifying for the both of them. And they try to rebound. Stouffer slips it down the inside. And still side by side they work. Momentum rolled around the outside for Vern Hawkins in the 25. We'll jump back to the front of your field once again. I'm curious about how this is playing out. Let's take a look from the rearward shot from the race leader here, Justin, because you'll see for Michael Goodman, compared to some of the cars behind him, he is much more comfortable defending from Nunez behind.
Yeah, it has some clean air as well, especially with the corners, and that you can see just where that struggle is on the corners right now. But look who's coming right behind as well. That is Mark Cohen, who is willing to be aggressive early on, trying to utilize the outside a little bit in the 39 car, and just made the pass for third position. Is trying to go for second.
There's lots of action. Alexander Van der Sant's losing a number of positions. Cohn's going to go around the outside on Nunez, and he's up into second. Great aerial look brought to us by ATVO, the graphical partners at RaceSpot TV. And Mark Cohn, what a move that was around the outside. And you know, Justin, we're early in the run. I expect that outside to grip up later. We're 17 laps into this one. Mark Cohn shows us you can find alternate lines here. He puts the pressure now onto Goodman in front.
Yeah, right now, Mark Cohen, the fastest car on the racetrack by 0.2 of a second at the moment. Doing a phenomenal job. It just seems to be committed there. That's the line where we've seen a couple drivers try and utilize that off the start before too. So you can just see a bit of that rubber plate. And here comes the move to the bottom.
Bold move to the bottom. Goodman leaves him space. Cohn to the race lead. And for the first time, I think Michael Goodman saw that car coming and wanted no part of blocking it. It's going to be Goodman back to the outside as Tyler Groff and Nunez battle it out for third behind them. It is starting to intensify at the front of your field, and guess what, Justin? That's bringing in a number of cars into this equation. 13 cars separated by 1.7 seconds as they fan out 3 wide.
And the car in the middle of that 3 wide is Matt Wagner, the quickest driver in practice earlier on tonight by a couple tenths of a second. So this is now where that long run pace is definitely starting to settle in, I think, now that some of the drivers are starting to burn up some of their tires. Here they go once again, 2x2, a couple rows deep.
About 3 rows of 2x2. Van der Sant has migrated up onto the outside line. Goodman has passed back Cohn once again, managing to hold off. Tyler Groff up into third as well. Luis Gonzalez Nunez has slipped into fourth. And once again going 3 wide behind these guys. Incredible stuff to kick off this Lionheart Speedway series, and really a taste of, I think, what we're going to get throughout the entire season. On board, let's jump with Trevor Malone, edge of the top 10 here. And you'll see, Justin, he's really got nowhere to go in terms of finding that crucial clean air.
Yeah, right now, the only hole is basically just follow the cars in front. Get the pole. Try and get yourself pulled ahead of the others to your inside. Then get yourself single file and try and pick off the drivers one by one. Because if you try and fight too long here, that's going to really hurt you at this point. So, meanwhile, the 66 machine happened to come into pit here under green.
Yeah, not sure what's happened there, but very, very unfortunate for Matt Houston, who's about to go one lap down as Mark Cohn is back to the front of your field. Tyler Groff looks to try and make it 3 wide, and they really are starting to get much more antsy over this race lead, and we're only halfway through the pit window, Justin. These tires, despite the fact it's relatively cool track temperatures, they must be starting to wear, and at some point, I wonder which line is going to really develop as the dominant one.
Yeah, most drivers had talked about, again, the bottom line being the preferred line for them at this point in 3 and 4 in particular. But the thing is, we're seeing both the lines playing out in 1 and 2 in particular to set up runs for the back straightaway. I think at this point, the thing is, with it going so much full throttle here down into the back straightaway, drivers have that ability to try and pinch down. The problem is, to complete the pass, is trying to get yourself fully clear once again for when that line preferably switches to the bottom for most of the circumstances. And that's why I think we've seen so many drivers struggle to get fully side by side and stay side by side for more than a lap or two so far in this race.
It almost is like coming off a road course corner out of turn 4. You're very much just trying to roll momentum and get onto the power as aggressively as you can, and I do think that that's why we're seeing more and more cars jumping up to the outside line, especially out of turn 4. Luis Gonzalez Nunez has worked back up around the outside as you see a great shot of the cars diving into turn 1. We talked about how many different lines are going to be taken, Justin, and interested that how many of these cars are really going about 4 lanes high through turn 1, because you really are traveling a much greater distance, even if you might be able to roll some more speed through the corner.
And I think that's why they're trying to carry that, is more speed higher up. And that's what we've been seeing so far. Keep in mind that we're coming off a brand new iRacing Build Tier 2, where they made adjustments to dynamic track in a majority of the circuits across iRacing. And I think that's part of what's playing into it is, for many tracks now, the top line is where you can carry a lot of speed. And we're seeing that here in Twin Wing Motegi in 1 and 2 in particular, where you're higher up on the banking, you're higher up on momentum to carry more speed off the corner and use it as a ramp on the corner exit.
Make a good point as well, right? Because the car is not necessarily getting regular updates anymore, but iRacing is a continuously evolving service, as a build scheduled this week as well. So things are always changing, and that dynamic track model, there's a lot of opinions around that, and we don't necessarily need to dive into that, but you're right, there was a big change, a big shift, and I wonder how that maybe will affect some of the other tracks, because Motegi is not necessarily where I'd expect it to make the most impact, as Mark Cohn back down the inside for the race lead. Looking at the schedule, you mentioned the likes of Charlotte, Justin. Wow, this dynamic track model really could shake things up.
Atlanta as well, Homestead, Miami, some of the other tracks, Chicagoland, that's been touched upon. A lot of various tracks that have been touched upon, and it's only expected to grow, Arjuna, as time goes on. But keep in mind that this race lead has been fierce so far. They've been very aggressive to try and block that bottom line in 1 and 2, but also it's the fact that Michael Goodman has been so strong here. You talked about some of his experience. He's been really good at ramping the car off the corner to be able to get the poles back and switch it back and forth for this race lead.
A shout out, by the way, to Tyler Maxon, who worked very hard to get us a custom camera pack for this event. Istvan Balor, TrackCams22.com, providing the additional car cameras for today. Completing lap 30 out of 130 here, 200-mile race. We're starting to get into that first pit window, and that's always tense, Justin. We talked about how they're going to be pitting off of turn number 3. Good communication is important, and not making a mistake is much easier than it sounds.
Yeah, already drivers have made it clear they're communicating over the radios to make sure they do that, and drivers have talked about that need to really gain everyone's trust and know everyone's driving style and see who you need to give extra few inches of space out there, as AJ Musselman had said in preparation for this race. So this is to where I think that comes into play as well, knowing you have to expect drivers to come down. You need to be aware of some of the strategies and have to be aware that, oh, hey, We're going to see a driver come off and peel in here in a little bit. We're about 10 laps or so from that estimated window as we go near 3 wide up towards the front.
It's getting very aggressive, not just for first and second, but these cars behind as well. We were looking off the rearward shot from Matt Wagner in the 3 car, riding around in 4th. He's got Van de Sant right behind him at this point in time. There are slowly gaps starting to develop here, Justin. Top 13 separated by 2 seconds, then about 1.5 seconds back to Christopher in 14th. You got a nice little group of cars there, but it is starting to splinter up a little bit, and you are seeing as well cars having to search for more clean air. You can't afford to just follow as closely as you were before. You really do have to be thinking about things a lot more now.
Exactly, and we've seen this so far in the various different series. In particular, it's going to be heavy tonight because drivers, as talked about, had mentioned aero is going to be so critical because, yes, you can get the draft down the straights, but in the corners, you stay tucked up behind somebody or lined up to somebody, it forces you tight and pushes you up the racetrack. Drivers felt like that was going to be absolutely huge for tonight, and we've seen that be the case, in particular in some of these main groups. If you're able to break away and get some of that aero pockets, though, it gives you a lot of good handling opportunities, and I think that's where this middle line has come in to where drivers are searching for that in 1 and 2.
And top 3 are slowly separating themselves out. Not by much, but Van de Sant is being reeled in by these cars behind. Ooh, contact almost made between... Oh, that was Nunez and Wagner. So Nunez has dropped down the order slightly. He's got Trevor Malone and Joe Hassert side by side behind them. We'll look at the movers and shakers very quickly here. Just quick update. Vern Hawkins down on pit road just a couple of laps ago. You'll see there, we really are seeing some big movement up and down through the field right now, Justin.
Yeah, how about plus 10 for Stouffer so far, up to 14th position, plus 4 for Chris Fowler, still plus 7 for Big Joe Hessert. Keep in mind for Joe, he has the most laps here in the DW12 for the active Speedway Series drivers here with 68. So he has a lot of experience leading up front here with that plus 7. I wouldn't be surprised to see him try and get to that lead pack if he can break his way out of this main kerfluffle of fighting.
Kerfluffle, I love it. Obviously, HyperX onboard shot from the left side of the car for Joe Hassert. Very impressive drive through the field, but still a long way to go. Can't count on anything yet. We are a couple of laps away then, Justin, from these pit stops getting underway. And what do you know? The top 10 cars once again closing in on each other. Chris Fowler, by the way, has just come down onto pit lane. Looks like the first car blinks and decides to come down and get fuel because there's no need based on the fuel numbers. This is a strategy play to potentially undercut the rest of the field.
And I think it's a smart call because when it comes to the estimated fuel marks, we're talking about potentially for some pit stops with 10 laps to go. And it's at the mine where drivers, yes, can put in a little bit of fuel, off and away they can go, but that's really tied towards the end of a race to be able to top off on the fuel. So I think for some that opens up the strategy, and doing that for others, don't be surprised to see them try and stretch it out because of the early caution flag to try and make sure they don't have to pit late. It's going to be very tight, I think, based on what we've seen so far pace-wise, though, right now with the way things are shaping out.
Can see the 2 Adrenaline Motorsports teammates, 13th, 14th. They're about a couple of seconds off from that main group, but if the chasing pack in front does decide to continue squabbling over top 10 positions, it will bring in these 2 teammates back into the equation. Christopher Kresge down on pit road this time around, edge of the top 30, so more and more cars deciding to come down this time. And it looks like Ron Hacker as well is going to be coming down, obviously pitting off of turn 3, so it's very clear when cars are coming onto pit road. The 21, Justin, blinks now.
Yeah, and they're doing a good job of communicating as well to make sure they have that no major issues for the drivers in the pit lane. It's where the drivers are very close, meanwhile, though, that I'd be slightly concerned, where Mark Cohn, like Goodman and company are right now, where you don't have too much space to be able to pull in, and where it's going to be valuable how much time you pick up, especially on the access roads, and how you time it up to where you stick on the bottom of the racetrack without drifting up, but also how you exit the pit lane all the way to the exit of turn 2 when you get back on the racetrack towards that blue cone. All are going to be very crucial, as it looks like some drivers looking like they're coming in now.
On board with Cone, he's followed in by Tyler Groff. Who else is that? That's think Matt Taylor, a couple of other cars staying out, though. Split strategies, as we saw just a couple of hours ago on RaceSpot TV. If a caution flies now, things really do get shaken up. So a busy pit road at this point in time, as you can see. 6 cars all coming down together. Who's going to win the race off pit road, Justin?
And I think it's going to be very similar in the pit stop times. It's going to be the big thing, Arjuna, on how they handle the access road as talked about. For many drivers, they have to practice this. And especially the highest of the highest levels, you practice that time in and time out. Coming in, coming out, taking tires, not taking tires, how you play the strategy and how the feel is going to be. And it looks like near similar timing off, but you can already see a little bit as these drivers exit the green cone. Mark Cohn had a great launch into the access road and pulled away a couple tenths.
And he's going to feed out right behind. I think that's... Oh, not sure who that is exactly, but that will help him build up that speed because they're not coming down onto pit road just yet. Alexander Van der Sant, Matt Taylor, James Grahula. The flood of cars comes down onto pit road at the front of your field then. You can see there those cars that peeled down the previous time around will make their way off. Where are your race leaders then, Justin? Because it's all mixed up at this point in time. And while we wait for Brian Greenlee, Adam Young to come down onto pit road because they owe us a pit stop, it's going to be very interesting what happens here. Guyon has missed his box. And a couple of cars exiting pit road.
Oh, and one car spun around in the pit lane there. Someone sideways in the pit lane.
I believe that's Tony Schowen, so drama on pit road. Wow, it's a tricky place to really come down and pit, but I think Tony Schowen got it wrong on exit as well. Van der Sant exits then, right in front of Mark Cohn, Justin. That's exactly what he needed.
Absolutely a great pit stop in that overcut, able to work, in fact, with a bit of that draft. The reason, by the way, the 31 that spun around was tire spin on the pit exit. And keep in mind, that's going to be very tricky here today, Arjun, because these are concrete boxes, but pavement, asphalt pavement for the pit lane itself. And some drivers have that trouble where if you hit the gas too hard, it can cause a ton of tire spin. And now the race lead is on once more.
It's Van der Sant versus Cohn. Joe Hassard is up into third. Nunez has lost out considerably. He's down in 7th position, 1.5 seconds off. Van der Sant looks for his inaugural Lionheart Racing Series victory. And what a debut it would be for him, Justin, to jump into a Lionheart race and win on debut.
Indeed, very talented as you talked about. And he's been very quick inside that top 5 just about the entire day so far. But one driver to keep an eye on, just behind him. We talked about him, Big Joe Hessert. How about plus 11 now, and he's now in the lead fight.
He's right on the back of it as well, so HyperX will be very happy. It's a slow car in front of them. I hope that doesn't compromise them too much. Van der Sant will slot into line. He recognizes that Cohn is trying to slip to the outside here, Justin. Now, lap traffic going to be a factor about halfway through this race.
Sturgeon Zallardo trying to move out of the way right now. He was involved in that first caution flag, remember, of this race. Push them really tight, in fact, as they get really squirrely trying to avoid that wall.
I think they all managed to get through safely, and Zaldo will hold the inside, let Van der Sant and Joe Hassert get around on this back straightaway, but that's helped Mark Cohn out very slightly as we complete lap 50 here at Twin Ring Motegi. It's been a fascinating race so far, Justin, and based on what we've seen so far, I really don't think we're going to know who's the main favorite until, maybe 15 laps to go here.
Especially how the strategy can play out, too. Keep in mind, many drivers stretch it to about 45, 46 laps or so on the fuel tank. They might be within a couple laps towards the end of this race at the current pace. It's going to be tight to see who can try stretching a one-stopper or a two.
Racing action continues then live from Motegi for the HyperX Motegi 200. We're going to step aside for a short commercial break here live on RaceSpot TV. We'll stay uninterrupted, though, and keep you side by side.
Wreck avoidances.
Stay low. Eat high, stay low.
Daring passes.
Oh, you're going to get it.
Silly jumps.
Oh my god, a drive-through.
The thrill of victory.
They're against the wall. Good win, Mark. Stay low.
And the occasional mishap.
My sim crashed.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
Back live on RaceSpot TV for continued coverage of the season opener in the Lionheart Speedway Series. And the Lionheart Racing Series powered by HyperX. Is great to be back on RaceSpot TV, ESTV, and Justin. Big drama then while we were under commercial break there. A car down onto pit road, DJ Clark, while they're squabbling 3 wide over the race lead.
Yeah, for DJ Clark, unfortunately for him, wanted the goal of a top 15 or so today. Ended up hitting the wall coming out of turn 4. Bad trouble indeed for him and his team. Paul Jenkins, his teammate, also having a rough race, is in 35th position, but damage repair still at the moment. But for that battle for the race lead, that's been heating up. Keep in mind, Big Joe Hessert up towards the front. You see DJ Clark, massive suspension damage. That likely ends his day.
Yeah, you see the tail end there, and we'll jump back to live pictures and pick up that lead battle because we're seeing some incredible stuff in that side-by-side, Justin. I mean, wow. I mean, it's really been a season opener in all 3 of these series where it's a statement. All of these drivers are hungry for a championship, and Joe Hessert, you want to talk about cars making their way up through the field. That's been a storyline in every single one of our races so far.
Yes, indeed, and for Joe Hessert, he's been doing it by just being nice and calm. He just has played it well on the strategy. He's been quick throughout this race and has just been able to stick that white line in particular the best out of anybody. Watch right here in turn 2. He just knows how to wrap that bottom, and that just got him quickly by the rest of the cars easily here. The errors can save a little bit, yes, but it's going to be tough to pass him, I think, right on back now that once they get by the traffic, he's going to have some clean space to work with once more, and he's the best of the best to wrap the bottom so far.
I was going to say, they've got traffic going 2 wide in front of them. That's Jeff Murray and Brian Greenlee battling over 30th position, and bragging rights and honor there. A disappointing day for the both of them. They look to try and stay on the lead lap, but they're about to get swarmed by Big Joe Hessert, Mark Cohn, and Alexander Van der Sande. The team battles are going to be interesting over the course of the season, Justin, and really there's not been one standout team so far. Everyone has had pace at various points in the race, and it's anyone's game. I really think over the course of 18 races and so many different types of ovals that we'll go to, I'm really expecting for some of these drivers who maybe are struggling a bit more today to really come on strong in some of their more favorable tracks.
I agree, and this is where the preferences are going to come into play for some of the drivers. Some just run better, say, at short tracks with some of the quick pace you have to run and the different gearing you have to run. For others, they handle these bigger tracks better, especially the ones where you can get some clean air and use multiple lines, where we've seen that, for example, at Homestead, Miami in the past. For others, keep in mind, there are different organizations that are working here for the first time. For example, we mentioned AJ Musselman, his team with Craig and Alex, for example, as 2 fellow drivers, raced together in various leagues, first-time teammates for some various different drivers throughout the series this season, Arjuna. It'll be in some cases the first time working together to see, okay, can we win a championship together?
And for Adrenaline Motorsports, I did say they might be the favorites. You got Chris Stouffer in 17th, Shawan and Joe Branch are 20th and 21st respectively. Not a ideal opener then for them. The IndyCar series did go a little bit better for the team as a whole. We're watching battles on the edge of the top 5. It's Matt Taylor right behind Tyler Groff, and you've got almost 3 wide. James Grahula tries to get past Matt Wagner, Trevor Malone out on the outside as well. Again, I'm not trying to overemphasize this, Justin, but if these people are enjoying the racing, they maybe want to get in on the fun as well. They should head on over to iRacing.com, LionheartRacingSeries.com as well. They can get signed up and get themselves on the reserve list for these series.
Yeah, this has been some fun racing, and for many drivers, they've looked forward to competing in this series, to say the very least. And we're very excited about this, especially with the depth of talent in this field. And it's a good opportunity for some drivers, I think, actually, as well, Arjuna, to be able to learn from one another if they can get themselves up to this level, especially to be able to learn the tracks, make friends, and as well race against one another, because there's a saying, you get better by racing the best of the best. And we've seen many drivers develop over the years where they race in series such as Lionheart in particular especially, and develop to be some of the best in all of open wheel racing on the service.
Yeah, and I mean, and no better indication of that than the level of talent on display now week in, week out in the IndyCar series. You've got some very strong drivers. You've got the series regulars, the likes of Joshua Chin, Sage Karam, and Adam Blocker now, a dominant trio. Rookies joining them, the likes of Jason Brophy, Henry Bennett. I mean, Henry Bennett, a 5-time IndyCar Open champion on official competition. Feels weird calling him a rookie, as it does Richie Hearn, prior IndyCar driver in the real world, who's a Lionheart IndyCar Series rookie this year. You just saw AJ Musselman, by the way, slowly dropping off the back of Michael Goodman there. A couple of cars starting to struggle in this middle portion of the run. Out front, still Mark Cohen, Joe Hassert, Alexander Van der Sant. You notice then, Justin, they built up about a 9/10 of a gap, second gap rather, over Tyler Groff. So I do wonder if there's a bit of swap drafting being done here, and the likes of Van der Sant being very smart to not check these guys up even more.
And you make a great point there with the swap drafting, because with this car in particular, if you work together and go back and forth, one driver goes to the inside of one line, the next corner, you have one driver go to the next line, and basically slingshot draft each other, you can break the draft of the rest of the pack, and that's exactly what's going on, in part because they're going near 3 wide behind them, of course, which doesn't help their factor.
3 wide is just not helping them at all. The gap's now ballooning up. It's 9/10 of a second and accelerating, because those guys cost themselves a good 5 kilometers an hour down this main straightaway. And obviously with 1 and 2 being so flat, you can see, I think that's Luis Gonzalez Nunez, who's defending from Matt Taylor now. Lost so much time, Justin, through 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's the frustrating thing when it comes to fighting too aggressively, and that's where drivers were talking about it, especially before the race today, is do you want to end up losing potentially a few seconds by fighting too hard? We've seen that in a couple cases. When it comes to the slingshots going back and forth, we've seen it now to where, as a result of that fighting and as a result of the speed they were carrying, they were up to 2/10 quicker up towards the front, and now they're about 1 second ahead. For other battles here, that's going to be the tough part, is trying to get yourself in position to try and do a slingshot battle if you want to try and get up to the next group, if that's what you would like to do so. And that's going to be one of the tough parts for the battle for 17th here, you see, because they need to close up about 1 second to get up to the next grouping of cars, up to 11, as high as that next train is.
Well, you know what? A couple of trends that are playing out exactly as we expected here, Justin. And we'll check out the front of your field and see these cars at the 3 front runners really duking it out hard. But we talked about pole sitter never having won this race before. I think we're on track for that again, unfortunately, at this point in time. We'll see how it shakes out, but Big Joe Hassett up 13 positions. He's really showing that you don't need track position necessarily here at Motegi. The second thing, though, importantly, we had an early caution, but it's been green since then, Justin, and for a track that really isn't known for having so many of those safety car interventions through the course of the series history, it very much is still playing out that way as well.
And again, I think that's partly because of just how wide this track is. We're talking about a track width that you can fit about maybe 9, 10 of these DW12 side by 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 side. I believe I missed a side in there. And that's why I think there's so much space for them to in turn battle and try and break slipstream and try and make moves. And that's, I think, why it's trended towards this direction. Just a lot of space for drivers to work around in as Grahula's come in for an early stop.
That's too early. That is way too early as well. The last pit window. Wow. He's come in about 5 laps early, Justin, and we still expect one more pit stop after this, so maybe some damage from Grahula might be the only reason why he came down, but relatively short stop. Maybe just a strategy call here.
That's what I'm thinking of here with it being a short pit stop here is we talked about how tight this end of the race is, and James Grahula is somebody we've seen in particular with the IndyCar Series take risks. Someone's crashing the pit lane entry. Chris Fowler's around.
It's Fowler, and they're going to stay under green, you know, because in the pit entry, the race control will not yellow flag that. And for the second race in a row, Chris Fowler, who took pole in the Lionheart Retro Series season opener just a couple of days ago, a big drama there. Let's spool up the replay machine, Justin, because it's not the first time we've seen cars make mistakes onto pit entry. Turn 3 entry was meant to make things a little bit easier, just locks up the brake at the very last moment.
Yeah, and it takes him a few seconds to turn it around as the old cone goes flying as well with the blow of the wind. But it just easily just locked up the brakes, especially looked like the rear tires just snapped around on him in a very terrible spot. Chris Fowler's race has gone from bad to okayish to bad again.
And it's very unfortunate there because you never know with that car how he's going to be able to do. He was very strong in IndyCar at Homestead, very strong at Retro as well. A slight contact with the man who leads this race right now, Big Joe Hassert, dropped Fowler out of contention. But we've still got about 50 laps to go here at the virtual twin ring Motegi. Out of the 38 starters, Justin, we've still got 33 cars out on track. Somehow, 26 of them on the lead lap as well. Attrition has really not been the main story of the race so far, because again, 1 caution and only about 3 cars getting caught up in that one.
And the fall off too, I'm interested in seeing so far, has popped up for some drivers up to half a second to a full second as well. And that's where I think just that separation coming through with how tough turns 3 and 4 have been so far is where that has really stemmed from. When you have these little packs start to separate you out, it's much more easier to have these longer green flag runs compared to, say, battling with a 25-car pack, 3 wide, a couple rows deep as well, in the mixture of things. Just the nature of how the race has played out so far is, keep in mind, we're slowly but surely approaching that second pit stop window, and it's going to be tight for a majority of the field to be able to stretch it towards the end of this race still, even then.
I don't think we're going to be able to get there. It's going to take some mighty fuel saving, and maybe that's why Grahula just tried something different. Come down onto pit road, get a slightly different track position if the caution flies. You never know. Cars are coming down onto the pit road, though. Chris Lanini back in 23rd place before he came down onto pit road. Gets up into his box. Will go up on the jacks to get a fresh set of rubber as well. What's the pit stop time going to be here then? I wonder if some cars will try and do a slightly shorter fill, but no, 8.5 seconds, Justin. That's probably a full tank of fuel.
Yeah, that would right now break down to potentially either a chance to try and split the run in half for Arjuna, or try and go to the end, try and take less fuel, a slower pit, or quicker pit stop, I should rather say, and save about a couple seconds of the pit lane with the pit stop with 10 laps to go. That's going to be the tough balance is, do you want to risk it and stay out and hope for a caution flag late? Or do you try and split the run from here as more drivers are coming in?
That's Matt Wagner onto pit road. Ron Hacker, Jess Young as well, so is going to be busy. But your top 3 runners still out there on track. I did see an interesting comment in our YouTube chat, and you know what? It's right on the money. If you're Alexander Van de Sant here, Justin, you've been running around in 3rd, able to save a lot more fuel than any of your competitors around, and while he's fallen off very slightly, as we enter this second pit stop window, Van de Sant might be able to do an undercut here.
Which may be a good call here overall, or if was able to save enough gas, be in one of those drivers to be in position to maybe try and stretch off fuel mileage. But here comes the top 2 in. They come in at about 40 laps in.
Expecting Van de Sant then the next time around, he'll lead the lap across.
Oh, they crashed!
Oh no!
The leaders are crashing!
It's Joe Hassert, it's Luis Gonzalez Nunez who's able to scamper on through. Trevor Malone, yellow flag has got to fly here because they're still crashing in pit road. Oh no, Joe, you've just come across the track in front. My word, Mark Cohen involved in that one as well. Top two are done for today's race then, Justin, because they'll have a big penalty as well. Look at the damage on Joe Hassert's machine.
Unreal. When we talked about the difficulty of the pit entry, I think Big Joe Hassert ended up just getting loose on that entry while the car behind a cone got loose coming in and actually overcooked his pit entry. So two different drivers made mistakes. And the problem with that position, again, is it's a very tight pit lane of about 3 car widths wide, and they were already blocking that entire track, Arjuna.
It's incredible, and they were looking so dominant. It was Hassert in front who loses it first. Cohen almost in a sympathy incident behind. Nunez does have damage. Tyler Graft gets involved in this one as well. We'll grab one more look at this and jump on board with maybe Tyler Graft here. He must be heartbroken. What can you do in this situation?
There's not much you can really do if the car's coming from behind, because you're going normal speed and then all of a sudden you notice the track blocked and you're just hoping that an opening pops up just in time. Unfortunately, the opening closed up very quickly with Joe trying to roll on forward. Everyone having a dodge each other. This is going to completely change the complexion of this race and may have just put Van der Sande in the driver's seat. And well, he's still out there on track as well. Matt Taylor has gone and passed, so maybe a bit of fuel saving gone wrong for Van der Sande, but it's hard to have any words for that rejoin from Hassert at the end there other than wow, because he took out another car there, Justin. If he had waited another second, no issue at all. The incident before has happened and there's no further contact, but now there's more things for race control to take a look at. And when we get to the end of this race, we're going to have to be careful. These will be unofficial race results. Race control is going to be very busy as Van der Sande comes into the box. Oh, and he slid into the box as well a little bit. Going to be awkwardly sideways in the box as he tries to get himself wheeling quickly here. This race has gotten very interesting as a result here, but because of that fuel saving, Matt Taylor has taken the race lead in the pit lane, and James Grahula is now in an interesting situation for his strategy with him having to come in one more stop. Keep in mind, these drivers have to still save who just came in about 2 laps of gas to stretch it. Well, if I've done the math correctly, Justin, they've split this race in half. Matt Taylor, Alexander Van der Sande, they may have just hit the strategy gold mine. It's going to take some work. It's not going to be easy now the pack is split up slightly more. Alexander Van der Sande finds himself about 1.4 seconds behind Matt Taylor. That might be the battle for the net race lead. James Grahula, Matt Wagner, first and third respectively, Justin. They both owe us a pit stop. And here's something else. Take a look at the side pod on the right side of Van der Sande. I believe he might have a bit of a scrape there, in fact, Arjuna. That may have been what popped up towards the late stages of his run, because I seen him get a little bit high off of turn 4, in particular one of the exits. So now he's in a spot where he might have to hope that the damage doesn't affect him too much. The problem is he lost 6/10 last time by. He's got a damaged race car. There's no other word for it. He is slow. And as he enters into turn 3, he's much slower than you want to be as compared to the cars in front of him. What's the lap time going to be for him this time across the line? That's the important question. It's another slow lap time, a 28.074. Van der Sande, an impressive debut performance, has come unstuck, and we'll try and get the replay up on the screen before the end of the race, Justin, but we've seen a number of cars struggling in dirty air. Van der Sande on that fuel save as well. One tiny mistake has cost him dear. Yeah, this race is just completely flipped upside down strategy-wise, but now, for some, Matt Taylor in particular, he's in a great spot here if he can try and stretch it on the gas here. I wouldn't be surprised to see him really back it on down, Arjuna. Make sure, for sure, he can try and stretch it down. It's going to be tight, though. He needs to stretch it about 2 laps on the gas, while these drivers, Wagner and Grahula, they're going to be going full out here and try and split this run as talked about up the middle, but in different parts here. Grahula's 20 laps in. Wagner's 11 laps into his stint. Well, I don't know why Matt Taylor is leading this race. Taylor should be in third. Taylor should be in the draft. Taylor should be saving fuel, and I hate to say Taylor should again, but wow. Interesting stuff to take a look at. Let's see if we can take a look at this replay. We're getting word that it was the end of lap 83, so for Van der Sande, let's spool up the replay machine for him.
You can see there's Hassert and Cone in front of him. So this was actually be right as those cars were coming down onto the pit side, I have to think, Justin. Let's take a look at the onboard and talk us through what you see.
Might have been the lap prior, pardon, but either way, you're going to see on the corner exit in particular how difficult this is around this racetrack. And in one of these corner exits, he was right behind those two cars you've seen and just plowed up into that wall in particular. I believe it's lap 82 in particular, in fact, that the issue happened. Apologies there, but you're going to see this in particular. This is where the dirty error is going to come into play with the aero wash, where he's just trying to run, save some gas. Right now is in a position at the time of being in position to be in the race lead. Now, watch on this corner exit right here. One car goes up to the middle. He tries to run the bottom line, but right here he gets in the aero wake of the car in front, pushes him right to the very edge of the safer barrier.
And that's not I mean, it looks soft and bounces off the wall, but that's significant damage at upwards of 280 kilometers an hour, Justin. That explains a lot. And poor Van der Sande, impressive debut. He's going to be one to watch for the remainder of the season for sure. There are gaps starting to form at the front of your field. Matt Taylor has an 0.8 of a second advantage here, Justin. I wonder if he's going flat out as well right now, thinking that he's going to need one more pit stop as well.
Yes, indeed. And I think as well, Nunez, Malone, Teed, Stouffer, Hawkins are all in those same strategy boats as well. We've gotten to a situation, Arjuna, now where if it stays green, it's a fuel mileage race. Whoever can save the gas the most is in a great position. But it's also going to be a spot where you'll have several drivers, Arjuna, who are going to be pushing full out, running up to half a second to a full second nearly quicker than the rest of the pack, trying to catch up to those who are trying to stretch it.
Left side of the screen, you can see the stint lengths for each of these drivers. Of course, Krahula, 25 laps in. He's coming down in the next 15 laps for sure. The question is, Taylor, Van der Sande, Tony Schowen, those are the drivers that potentially can do 30 more laps and get this to the end of the race. It's going to be oh so close. But this now is a fuel mileage race. And I did say at the start of this broadcast, Justin, that cautions tend to interfere with race strategy. It is right on the cusp right now. Because if you're Matt Taylor, if you're Tony Schowen, you know if that caution flies at the perfect time, you guys have a locked up podium position here.
Exactly. And I think they'd be very happy with how this race has played out to be in that situation. But keep in mind, if there is a, say, late race caution flag, it's been talked about, Arjuna, by some teams, they may go fuel only. They may not take tires in that circumstance. They might risk the tire wear we've seen throughout the race today for the track position in the later stages. So we're in that spot where it can be a strategy bonanza now. Not just for what we see here, but if any trouble was to afoot here. We talked about this, though. This isn't a track that is known for caution flags, so that's going to be the gamble, if it was to happen, that we could also see play out.
On board with Indiana's own Chris Stouffer, he's charged his way up through the field after a very disappointing qualifying. In 24th, contact made with him as well. Oh no, there's a car up into the wall. Can we stay under green? I think that was a lapped car. Matt Houston getting involved in that one, Justin. And unfortunately for Chris Stouffer, I was just talking about what a good race it had been for him. Day comes unstuck.
And that's unfortunate big time. Just try to clear on by the lapped car. Houston was just trying to run the high line, make contact tire to tire, in particular on the exit of turn 4. Going to see from the back straight away that the 66 was trying to move out of the way, I believe. Here you see him try and go a little bit higher, give some space to the car below. But right about here is where that run comes into play. Didn't get fully clear, and that's where that contact comes in. For Houston, he gets hit to the wall hard, down the whole entire front straightaway just about. While back end damage potentially there for Chris Stouffer. The 66 definitely going to have to come in for significant repairs to the right side pod.
Yeah, last time the lap time for Stouffer was a 28.478. He's down in 8th right now. Big shame. And lap traffic, I don't think, to be honest, Houston did anything wrong there. Justin. He's running his line. He's on the outside. He doesn't have to just get out of the throttle to let cars go on past. An unfortunate incident then. You will notice what's happened to James Krahula. Down onto pit road. Final stop in the race, so he blinks first. The question now is, when do the remaining cars decide to come onto pit road?
Yeah, and keep in mind, he was in the strategy of split the race in half, so this is going to be a fairly short stop, I think, for him in the pit lane. For Wagner, it's the interesting mark of when he elects to try and come in, because right now he's 24 laps into his stint. The longest he can try and stretch it is potentially to about under 10 laps to go. So he might be in the spot, too, where he can try and hope for some caution flags to try and get himself track position here. He has been saving a ton, though, with Matt Taylor in front this entire run.
And Taylor's been unable to do as much saving, but through the traffic, they work. And it's Matt Taylor versus Matt Wagner. 8 seconds clear of Trevor Malone in third. It's a good fight for that third and final podium position. Luis Gonzalez Nunez has dropped to fourth, but you can see there is James Krahula on those new tires. 8.1 seconds stationary for him, Justin. He's looking to rocket his way up through the field.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting how much time he can try and gain up. He needs to gain 36 seconds on those fresh tires. And the times are going to be critical since he's going to be a lap down here, has to work his way through a ton of traffic and a lot of cars who are going to be trying to stretch it still on this gas. And he's not the first driver one lap down either. 27.4, that's only about a tenth quicker than the race leader at the moment, but it's upwards of about nearly half a second quicker than the majority of the pack.
Yeah, he's much quicker than, I would say, 80% of the field. Matt Taylor has done a great job at the front of your field, working in clean air through the traffic to find his opportunities to clear various cars. Van de Sant, by the way, has dropped behind Charles Teed now, and it's a battle between two damaged cars, Stouffer and Van de Sant. You got Tony Schau and Michael Goodman, Dean Moll coming in from behind to take advantage. Michael Goodman, after running at the front of your field for a vast majority of the opening stint here, Justin, you can see there pit lane time 13.2. Slight mistake, slight damage as well, I think, has unfortunately cost Goodman dear in this one. It was a very interesting car that he had underneath him, the way that he was driving it. And I think, again, for Michael Goodman, just like Van de Sant, it's going to be a race of disappointment, but optimism for the rest of the season.
Especially with the speed seen in the first part of this race, especially the first third. I think there's a lot to be proud of if you're Michael Goodman with his experience. It just didn't play out for him strategy-wise once things broke down and once our drivers started to charge through who saved their tires. Still, in a position for a solid finish here, just needs to keep it clean towards the end of this race.
And we're in those final stages now. Matt Wagner meant to come down onto pit road in 10 laps time, and I don't think you can save enough fuel to avoid that. For Matt Taylor, he's meant to come down in about 15 laps time, Justin. It's possible. I'm still very confused, though. The lap times he's running, he's out there by himself. 1.3 seconds clear now from Matt Wagner. He can't be saving fuel at this point in time.
Yeah, and he's continuing to just pull off and away with the pace. Absolutely. This is going to be nerve-wracking, I think, right now. And I think the entire field's still in this situation just about here. Maybe the 31 can stretch at the best since he's now 25 laps into his stint. Matt Taylor's coming up to 26 this time by. But I think if you stretched it the longest in the last pit stop when you're in a better situation to try and make sure you can make it from here, Matt Taylor's really starting to back it down on these corner exits, down to the 170-mile-an-hour range, that time in 3 and 4.
Oh yeah, for sure. He's definitely realized that he's got to back it down now. Like you say, in the driver's seat, if they can make it, it's going to be Taylor, it's going to be Shawan. It's going to be, Alexis Newsom is another car on that lap. There are a couple of cars that pitted the lap before them, Justin, but the amount of fuel that we're talking here is not just 1 or 2 laps. We're talking about 6 or 7 laps being required. It's going to be so close, and I wonder if Krahula has actually got the better strategy here, because he's going flat out. He's not worrying about saving time, trying to avoid spluttering on that final lap of the race.
Oh, caution!
And that's a game changer. That means for these 3 cars, they're in the driver's seat.
Wow, I think it was Michael Goodman who went around and clipped the apron in 3 and 4 here, Arjuna.
See if we can spool that up on the replay machine, but wow, late race caution and big implications then in the strategy. Wow, so first we'll take a look at the replay, then we have to figure out, Justin, what the math looks like. Here is that incident, working through turn 3. He's all the way down on the white line, and ooh, he's going to lose it by himself. Slight contact from behind. He manages to avoid major contact. Very good avoiding action there as well from that car.
And keep an eye, I think, on the left side tires in particular. You've seen there just went underneath that white line, Arjuna, and that was just enough. Right there is where he clipped a bit of the apron, started getting loose, and you're not going to have enough time to check up in that circumstance. This entire race just flipped upside down as a result here, and now the drivers who were trying to pit, they're going to be potentially pinned here towards the back of the field or a lap down. Only 14 drivers were on the lead lap.
So Matt Taylor is going to come down. It will be a splash of fuel for him. I wonder if he's going to take tires. Wagner onto pit road. As the number of lapped cars in between second and third positions, Malone down onto pit road. The question I have, who stays out? Luis Gonzalez Nunez stays out. Charles Teed stays out. Van de Sant stays out. I think Dean Moll has stayed out as well, Justin.
Interesting calls here, and they're still going to be tight, some of those drivers on the fuel, but keep in mind as well, Taylor 8 seconds, Wagner 8.3 seconds of the box. Many of the drivers low fueling their cars. You get light with the lighter car, you go quicker here. It's going to be pivotal here, as I think Matt Taylor may have a problem here. He just popped back on the racetrack, and we have a blue cone here at Twin Ring Motegi. That could be a massive mistake.
And I think you're seeing behind him as well, Matt Wagner has done the same thing.
Yep, there's the blue cone. If you stay, you have to stay below the line to the blue cone, and to be able to exit the pit lane properly here.
Wow.
If I think what's is about to happen here is going to happen, this could be major.
End of line penalties. That's what's about to happen, Justin, right?
Yes, sir. And there they are. There it is right there.
So we'll... Wow. Yeah, we're already past it at this point in time. We'll have to spool it back even further. Here you can see it's just an absent-minded mistake. Doesn't even really think about it. And you know, I feel awful for Wagner, who must have thought that Taylor knew what he was doing. Wow.
Just a brain fade. What a time for that. And I think Wagner just realized it later than what was just realized by the leader. That is a major mistake.
And the two main favorites are going to be back in 13th and 14th position. The important thing, though, Justin, is only a couple of cars in front of them on fresh tires now. Left side of your screen, let's quickly cycle through these because I think lights are off on the pace car. You can see the top 6 drivers. I'm a little afraid they will be sitting ducks.
Yeah, their pace, keep in mind, some of these drivers who stayed out were 28-second lap times. This is going to be where it's going to be difficult for some of these drivers. This is going to help them make it on the gas, but this is a massive gamble here to hope that the track position is more valuable than the tires right now, and I don't know if this is going to play out for a race-winning move here. It may, for some of them, to prevent what could have been for some of them towards the back half of the field, but a major call this close to the end of the race.
Well, we've got one more lap under caution. A couple of cars will get laps around. I'm hearing fuel being burned as well. Lots of drama, lots of intrigue here in the HyperX Motegi 200. It is a shame that real-life Indy cars can no longer really come here too regularly. The road course gets almost weekly usage between Super GT, Super Formula. You've got WEC that has not visited Motegi in the past, I'm thinking of Fuji, but local races and everything on a almost weekly schedule on the road course. The oval in a bit of disrepair at this point in time. The first ever race won here was actually by Adrian Fernandez, a man who for those wondering, has actually competed in the Lionheart Racing Series, so lots of little connections to be made between the real-world history and the sim history as well. Second caution then of today's race, Justin, and the next one will probably end the race.
Yeah, this is going to be an exciting finish, I think, here. We might see 2 to 3 wide once more to decide this. And some players we hadn't seen towards the closing stages here until now. Joe Branch, Jim Brooks. Christopher's back in the conversation. Goodman also back in the conversation if he can get himself through some of this traffic early on here. This is about to get really exciting here, to say the very least. But you're also going to have to be very careful here if you want to win this race.
It's going to be 10 laps to go at the line here in the land of the rising sun. Our season opener in the first ever season of the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by the DMLC Racing Channel. Safety car down onto the pit lane for hopefully the final time this race. And at the front of your field, it's Luis Gonzalez Nunez leading us back to green flag racing. You can see the car's getting stacked up at the tail end of the field, but it's at the front where our eyes will focus. And we'll wait for Trevor Malone in that teal number 69 car to try and make something work. That will be our first indication of just how important tires are going to be here, Justin. And he's going to go down to the inside of Alexis Newsom and make it look very easy, except he touches the apron very slightly, bobbles, holds on to the position. May be a slight indication that these cars can't push too hard.
Still needs to close up about 1.5 seconds, and it also doesn't help when they're fighting each other right here for position. That bottom line really coming into play early on in this run now for some of these drivers. They have already lost themselves nearly a full second to the top 5.
As lots of battling going on, and with 9 laps to go, you can't afford this. Nunez leads from Teed, Mole, Van de Sant, and Rigney across the line. Top 5 cars, all on older tires. Teed will look down to the inside through turn 1, forces Nunez to concede the position. Here will come Mole to try and get down to the inside as well. And now as these cars start to fight, you will start to see Trevor Malone, Justin, start to close on in.
Absolutely now, and this is really helping their cause right now. Running 27.6s at the moment, these cars fighting. Fresh tires, 27.1, some of their fastest laps the entire day coming up right here. As now it looks like the 31 machine's now caught up to 4th.
And I think those cars behind will start to catch. Mole tries to challenge Teed around the outside as they fan out down this back straightaway. Malone stuck on the outside line. He's got Tony Schowen in front of him, will clear Van de Sant with that damage. That's an important pass as well. Here comes Joe Branch, Schowen's teammate, to also get the move done as Dean Mole into the lead of the race. Those cars out front really are struggling to hold on, Justin, and with 6 to go, Tony Schowen, Joe Branch, and Trevor Malone, they're in the driver's seat.
Yeah, Tony played this perfectly now, was one of those drivers on a different strategy and was able to get the lap back, but now forced to try and go way high here, try and get as much clean air as he can here, way out of the rubber.
And he'll make it work, you know, past Nunez into 4th, sniffs a podium position, and his teammate will try and follow him as well. 5 laps to go at the line. And it's been a really entertaining season opener here. Branch gets past Nunez. Schowen and Branch now have to work together. Branch will look to try and dive to the outside and try and clear Nunez. He's unable to get that happen just in time. Watch this momentum, Justin, that Schowen is going to rip down the start-finish line.
Yeah, really good pull there. And plenty of time to work with. Just needs to pass a car a lap at the rate he's going. But the problem is, fight's being done very well by Rigby here.
Teed is also helping out these other cars that have not come down pit road. As I say that, though, they jinked the high line, give Schowen the draft as well, gives him that high line that he's favoring. He's up into the podium positions. His teammates trying to follow him, but Trevor Malone, oh, Branch almost cut off Malone there across the start-finish line. Realized that he couldn't do it just in time. Now looks to the inside, into the top 5. Comes Malone and Joe Branch. 3 laps to go, Justin. At the front of your field, here comes Tony Schowen.
And that top line is really rolling well now in 3 and 4 with the fresher tires here. Continuing to turn better laps to get that fresher air. Here comes the move for 2nd.
Beautiful over-under there by Schowen. He realized that he couldn't use that outside line. Teed will try and defend, but through turn 1 and 2, you'd have to think Schowen might be able to hold on. He's going to try and run that outside line, build up his momentum once again then, Justin. White flag about to wave.
He needs to complete this pass on second. This corner having a shot. A bit of contact with the wall, in fact, for second place.
And he's going to try a slide job here. That will compromise his momentum. White flag waves then. Final lap here in the land of the rising sun. It's Dean Mole trying to hold off the challenge from Tony Schowen behind. His branches looking to the inside of T. There was almost contact there. It's checked up Branch a lot. Here comes Trevor Malone to challenge for fourth position. Out front, though, Dean Mole still weaves back and forth. He's going to hold on for the lead here and out of turn 4. An outstanding season opener here in the Lionheart Speedway Series. It sets the tone for the entire season, and Dean Mole takes victory in the HyperX Motegi 200. 3 wide across the line further back. And really, Justin, a statement that this is a series that on a Monday night you want to watch out for in terms of having some incredible close racing.
And how about some incredible strategy there? We weren't quite sure if the old tires would hold on, but they held on just long enough, Arjuna, for Dean Mole to hold on. One more lap, and I think Tony Schowen might have got there. But for Dean Mole, a big, big victory to be able to hold on here for the checker flag.
And for an independent driver as well, we talked a lot about team battles maybe being a thing that we're going to watch out for. A statement and a victory. He's got hashtag Racing for John as well. Thoughts and prayers go out to Kinetic Racing and their team boss, John King. I'm sure Dean Mole will be very, very happy to get this victory today. Motegi really did deliver. And in just a couple of days' time, the Lionheart Racing Series returns to RaceSpot TV and ESTV for the Lionheart Retro Series Grand Prix of Watkins Glen. I'm still a little bit in disbelief there, Justin, about how that end of the race played out. Lionheart and these first 3 races, they have delivered, and I can't wait for what is 57 more broadcasts across the entirety of 2021.
An absolutely unbelievable race, to say the very least. We expect the strategy to come into play based on the field numbers coming in, and we've seen the strategy play in. That early caution really factored in on how drivers broke down how they were going to try and save fuel, if they were going to try an extra stop, if they're going to try and stretch it out to save that extra stop. But in the end, it's the late caution that pops up and the track position that ends up being the all-powerful decider here at Twin Ring, Motegi.
So let's go take a look at the Carnox race results, and we must say these are provisional. There was lots of drama. Race Control will have their say as well, and you'll want to just keep your eyes out for that. But Dean Mole, the independent driver, takes victory 0.2 of a second clear from Tony Schowen. Adrenaline Motorsport, after a very disappointing qualifying, Justin, recover to second and third. Charles Teed in 4th, Trevor Malone in 5th, another independent driver. A good day for these independent drivers. Christopher 6th after late race damage. Mike Rigney 7th. Michael Goodman 8th. Van der Sant unfortunately drops to 9th. Impressive debut. Watch for Van der Sant throughout this season. Matt Taylor in 10th position. Disappointment for him after a late race mistake in that late caution run, as did Matt Wagner, for Dark Horse Motorsport. Jim Brooks in the number 51 crossed the line in 12th, with James Krahula on that alternate strategy, unable to make it work as a result of that second caution. Alexis Newsom, qualified in 2nd, will be disappointed with the race pace, but it's clear performance will be there later in the season. For Luis Gonzalez Nunez, 15th for him. Unfortunately, Chris Fowler then 1 lap down with a number of other cars. Vern Hawkins, AJ Musselman, Chris Lanini, Ken Hacker rounding out the top 20. Craig Forsyth, Christopher Krisge representing the Reddit IndyCar League. Then you got Jeff Heesong, Brian Greenlee, Adam Young, and Tyler Groff, all 1 lap down. Alex Guyon, 2 laps down. Good to see him in this as well. Multiple of these drivers competing across of the Lionheart Racing Series. Series organizer George Anzaldo, disappointing day for him in 28th. Ron Hacker 29th. Jeff Murray back in 30th position on a final set of results. Matt Houston, Joe Hassert, Mark Cohn, DJ Clark, Paul Jenkins, Brett Bennett, Eric Schaus, Emerson Santos. Lots of non-finishes in this race, Justin. And I think for a lot of these drivers, they would have been hoping for a better result. But ultimately, Twin Ring claims their victims.
Yes, indeed, especially with the early trouble in this race from that incident early on. But it helped play out what was some massive strategy for some of these drivers Keep in mind that some of the drivers, how close were they on gas? Nunez ran out of gas in the closing stages, Arjuna. It was exciting to say the very least amongst this event today.
So let's go trackside for post-race coverage presented by HyperX. And in the HyperX victory lane, it is Dean Mullen. He's standing by with Justin Prince.
Yes, indeed. You celebrate here in HyperX victory lane, Dean. A big victory, a big call to stay out in the late stages under that late caution. How are you feeling coming away with the victory here to start off the Speedway Series?
Oh, I am so excited. I have had, it's been 2 years and a lot of near misses in Lionheart, so to have this work out, it was awesome. I actually didn't want to see that last yellow. I was good to go to the end on fuel, but at the end I'm like, oh, I'm just staying out and going for it. And I guess because I was saving the tires held up, it was pretty strong at the end. So this is a really strong field, and Lionheart's such a great league, so to pull off a win is just amazing. I'm thrilled with it.
Of course, you had a few drivers on those fresh tires coming in quickly. What was the pressure like seeing the pack close in and half the battles with the air drivers who stayed out with you, but were closing in those closing stages?
Oh yeah, I saw Tony had a huge run coming. I think he was one of the guys that pitted on tires, and I was weaving all over the track, doing whatever I could to break the draft, try to maintain a gap. The only good thing was I was able to do a high entry in 3 and then kind of get to the bottom of the track in 3 and 4, which I think took the air off of them. So I was using everything that I had learned driving Indy cars to try to hang on there.
Overall, how does it feel to be the winner of this series in the return of these cars here in Lionheart competition after what was a strategy-filled race overall?
Very, very, very thrilled with it. I had a last year in the retro series, and it was one of the most difficult seasons I've had in sim racing. Just a lot of mistakes on my part, a lot of bad luck. So to come over here, Speedway Series, first race on Race Spot for the Speedway Series, ESTV. I mean, everything that Lionheart does, it's a great league, and because of the admin team is the main reason I stuck with it. So definitely excited for this year, and glad to get an awesome result to start.
Now Texas is next on the calendar. That's going to be March 22nd. Your thoughts on going to Texas Motor Speedway?
Not too sure yet. I still got to get past this one. I know it's a fast track, big pack, so should be a pretty exciting race. I think this one put on a good show, so I think we'll do even better there.
A big victory for you today, Dean. Congratulations once more to making it to HyperX Victory Lane.
Hey, thanks. Can I just say one extra thing? If that's all right?
Yes, sir.
I still have the logo on my car. I've got Racing for John on there. So this race, I race for Synergy and Lionheart, but in the Endurance Series, I race for Kinetic Racing. And the team boss, John King, is going through some serious health issues right now. So everyone's been running the Racing for John logo, and I want to dedicate this win and my season to him. So he's one of the, as you know, you make a lot of friends in sim racing, and he's one of those guys that makes a big impression on you, and just really hope the best for him, and want to dedicate this to him because he's one of the great guys in sim racing, and it's tough for everyone with what he's going through.
Thank you very much, Dean, and thank you very much for the touching words.
I think shared by a lot of the community as well. Thoughts and prayers with John King and the entire Kinetic team. Let's move it on down, though, not to our race winner. Very happy Dean Mullen, HyperX Victory Lane. Let's bring in Tony Showen from Adrenaline Motorsports there. And Tony, I'm not sure you necessarily expected a second and third given how qualifying went and then how the first couple of laps in the race went as well, but it all came together at the end, and good start to a new campaign here at the Lionheart Speedway Series.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Arjuna. Yeah, I even did a half spin in the pits on that first green pit. I have the pit box where there's bumps in the box, and I spun out, so that put me back. But yeah, it basically turned into a few mile race till the end, and then I thought I was actually going to be up there when I could see a bunch of guys fuel saving at the end there before that last caution, but it still worked out pretty good.
How great is it to break How great is it, Tony, to break out the old Dallara DW12? It's obviously not got the love and attention of the R18 over the recent months, but it really looked like a fun car to drive. No in-car tools as well, which does mean it's a much bigger challenge for you to adapt as a driver over the course of the race.
Yeah, I like having the tools. I race a lot of open races, so I think that would have been an advantage over some of the other guys that don't. But yeah, it was fun to get back in the car. It was nice to be able to see without having a post in front of you too. So,
well, what's this campaign going to hold for you? Because obviously, Adrenaline Motorsports, the Lionheart IndyCar Series champion, you've got a strong team. It's Shawan, Branch, and Stouffer, 3 names that are big names in the IndyCar Series. Qualifying maybe not how you anticipated it, but I think this still starts you guys off very nicely for the rest of this season.
yeah, I agree. I think we're going to be a pretty strong team overall, and it showed tonight. I think Stouffer ended up 6th and Branch right behind me, so I think that's going to be a pretty consistent thing for us. We're all pretty experienced on these tracks, and I'm really excited going forward to racing with those other 2 guys.
Well, congrats on the second, Tony. Good drive through the field. Looking forward to seeing you next time at Texas Motor Speedway.
Thanks, Arjuna.
So, Tony Shawan representing Adrenaline Motorsports in this series. His teammate standing by now, 3rd place. An unexpected 3rd place, I do think, for Joe Branch. Justin Prince is standing by.
Yes, indeed. Among the drivers who were trying to roll the dice on strategy with the fuel in particular, and you were able to cut through the drivers on older tires as well. Joe, talk us through those closing stages. The strategy came into play late, and you also had to avoid a bit of trouble at one point.
Yeah, Tony and I were, I think we were in good shape even before the caution came out. We were saving, working together. We were going to make it. So, and we were, because we had been saving for 2 stints, we had extra fuel. Everybody was coming back to us, so we were going to be racy. And then the last stint there, it was time to go on fresh tires, and it was definitely fun.
How tricky was it to try and carve your way through those cars to be able to get yourself onto the podium?
It was definitely tricky. There was a time where I lost momentum and had to regain it. I thought I was going to lose the podium there, but I'm just excited for the Team Adrenaline Autosport guys. 2nd, 3rd, and 6th. It's a good start.
Next race goes to Texas Motor Speedway. Your thoughts on going to the Lone Star State?
It'll be interesting. I think we ran there forever. It's a little different now with the new layout. We'll see how the DW12 runs there. I don't think I've ever raced there since it's been repaved, so I'm not sure how to handle, but looking forward to it.
Congratulations on the podium finish, Joe. A good run for you.
Thank you guys.
That's Joe Branch, 3rd place, up 22 positions tonight.
There were some huge movers and shakers in that one as well, Justin. And before we wrap up here, let's get some closing thoughts in this HyperX post-race show, because really excited. It's not just this series, which has really kept me entertained. IndyCar and Retro. It's been an incredible opening round of Lionheart Racing Series competition. And back on Thursday as well, we've got the Lionheart Retro Series, round 2 from upstate New York. It's going to be a very interesting opening couple of months in this series, because the races come back to back, and there are drivers that are competing in all 3 of these championships.
Yeah, they're going to have to be putting a ton of work in, to say the very least, to make sure they're ready to go if they're competing in all 3 series like we've seen many drivers do tonight. But the main thing that popped out to me, especially Arjuna, was strategy, more strategy was the name of the game right from that first caution flag early on. I think we both knew that fuel mileage was going to be tight based on the margins and the numbers, and drivers talked about how they felt like they were comfortable to go on the fuel. That late stage caution really shook things up though, and really showed which drivers were the best ones to be able to carve their way through the field and through the traffic, and which drivers were able to utilize said strategy, despite the older tires, to be able to stay at the front, and how they saved their tires while they tried to stretch on the field themselves.
Few thank yous to get to as well before we wrap up, so let's walk you through the main faces that help power the Lionheart Racing series. First, it's the series sponsors, the DMLC Racing channel. Looking for entertaining sim racing content? Then look no further than the DMLC Racing channel. Follow former Lionheart Retro Series Driver of the Year Mark Cohn's racing escapades as he battles for wins and avoids wrecks with cat-like reflexes, all while providing commentary sure to make you laugh, cry, or both. Follow along by subscribing to the DMLC Racing channel on YouTube and like his Facebook page at the DMLC Racing channel. The Lionheart Racing series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit www.hyperxgaming.com and don't forget to use the promo code Lionheart15, that's LIONHRT15, for 15% off all orders.
Series also presented by the Sim Experience AccuForce Pro 2 V2, premier professional simulation racing steering system. The key to its incredible realism is the groundbreaking direct drive motor control system, providing a direct driving experience that's second only to the real thing. For more information on the entire Sim Experience ecosystem, visit www.simexperience.com.
For sim racers, the Butt Kicker Gamer 2 or Simulation Kit adds the missing driver-to-car connection, bringing more realism to your sessions. By accurately responding to in-game audio, you can feel the track like never before, providing increased vehicle handling and faster lap times. Are you ready for the most immersive experience in all of sim racing? For more information, visit www.thebuttkicker.com. And don't forget to use promo code LION2021 for 20% off all orders.
Minus 273 is the premier name in karting gloves. Their industry-leading gloves are super light and durable, made of breathable poly spandex. Whether you're a kart or sim racer, Minus 273 gives you control to reach victory lane. For more information on Minus 273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit minus273.biz. Don't forget to also use Minus 273 LHRS15 for 15% off orders.
And it's not just those names, there are so many more behind the Lionheart Racing series, and you can head on over to LionheartRacingSeries.com to learn more about each of the sponsors up on your screen right now. Before we go, Justin, let's quickly talk about the series schedule, because we get a week and we'll come back from the Texas Motor Speedway. That will be interesting, and Dean Moll will be looking to go 2 for 2. Joe Branch, Tony Showen, I think Adrenaline Motorsport. Qualifying didn't go well. That will be something they work on in the next week.
I think so as well, especially with how tight qualifying was here. I'm expecting to be tight as well at Texas Motor Speedway. But it was mentioned by a couple of the drivers, the challenges that could come into play with the banking there in particular. Because the current Texas layout in particular, bit flatter banking in turns 1 and 2, that can have a bit of an impact on how the drivers handle the corner, similar to what we've seen here at Twin Ring Motegi with the tighter turn 3 and 4. It's going to be interesting how tire wearing strategy plays out for that race.
Lots more to come then on RaceSpot TV and ESTV here in the Lionheart Racing series powered by HyperX. We'll return then on Thursday for more Lionheart Retro Series action, and a week from today, round 2 of the Lionheart Speedway series live from the Texas Motor Speedway. You can follow us across all of these different social media channels for more esports action. The Lionheart Racing series, of course, will provide updates around this entire organization. ESTV, our rebroadcast host, can follow them for all up-to-date live programming scheduling. You can follow us at RaceSpot TV for all of the greatest sim racing broadcasts and the great series that we get to cover live on our channels. It's been a super entertaining season opener, and Dean Moll will leave the Land of the Rising Sun as a victor in the Lionheart Racing series. Thank you for tuning in to RaceSpot TV, and on behalf of the entire team, Justin Prince and myself, Arjuna Kenkipati, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time live on RaceSpot TV.